In the following video, we'll review QDA, Quick Depth Adjust, and AccuSet.
Coming off of our valve, if you got high float hydraulics and a QDA frame is being able to lift and lower the frame to adjust seating depth. Or if it had AccuSet, it'd be ported in the same spot. So we have a QDA R, that's return, and a QDA P, that's pressure. So pressure oil, so that's directly ported to the pressure here. We don't go through the control valve, it's directly ported to here, comes in here. We have this valve we can cycle to raise and lower the openers, or the frame, sorry, adjust our depth, put it back down. We have a one-way check to make sure that oil is always going the right direction so it can't run backwards. So before I talked about how cutting the power here would verify direction of oil. Also, if my QDA works, the oil is running in the right direction because of the one-way check in here. And again, if it had AccuSet, it would be using the same two ports.
So let's review what we've learned about QDA and AccuSet. For that, we're going to go to the 3441-53 high float block. Very similar on the standard block, just a couple differences we'll point out. The TR-TR-DCP is a pressure oil coming from the tractor for the depth circuit, and the TR-TR-DCR is a return oil. So our pressure oil is ported directly to the QDA port, does not go through directional control. So it goes directly out to the QDA P, and the return goes directly back into the block under the QDA R, and then back out to the tractor on the DCR. Very simple circuit. The standard valve configuration is virtually identical. The only difference is we peel off the oil before the valve. So we take our pressure oil before the valve and send it to the QDA selector valve. There is a one-way check on the way back on the return side. That makes it so you cannot run the oil in the wrong direction. You have to make sure oil is running in the proper direction from the tractor for the QDA system to work. It's a very simple selector valve. You just shuttle it over. It applies pressure to the base end of the cylinders to extend the rods and raise them up. There'll be 12 cylinders per drill. And then when you want to lower them back onto the depth shims, you cycle the valve the other way, and the weight of the frame will help the cylinders down, pass the one-way check, and then return to sump. We'll move over to the AccuSet, a little unique, but very similar operation. We have the P port feeding the 3441-80 AccuSet valves. There's 6 of them controlling the 12 cylinders. So that means each of these valves controls 2 cylinders. The R port, we still have to pass the one-way check, so it will not work in the wrong direction. So the P port feeds both SV1 and SV2. SV1 feeds the rear cylinder. SV2 feeds the front cylinder. These AccuSet cylinders have a proximity sensor in them, so they know where they are located, and then the app would know how high to make them to match the amount of shims. So with the AccuSet system, the frame weight sits on the cylinder. So there is a 500 psi relief valve. That's to limit the amount of pressure that would sit on them when they're pushing against the shims, if there are shims installed. So it's effectively a relief pressure, so we cannot squish all the shims with the hydraulic pressure coming from the tractor. Then this counterbalance valve, all that does is helps hold these cylinders up during transport, so the weight of the QDA arms is not sitting on SV1 and SV2.